We're going to talk about the keys to a winning offer. We've got 3 different keys, all right? First, pre-approval. Second is your terms. And third is the negotiation tactics. And I'm going to be honest, these all go hand in hand with one another. So let's jump on it. Pre-approval. Now, why do we care about the pre-approval? Obviously, as everybody knows, it tells us how much money we can spend on a house. But what we don't often talk about are the type of pre-approvals and why they're so important. So there's 3 main categories that we focus on. First, cash. And as everybody knows, cash is king. Okay? Everybody would take an offer if it was a cash offer and everything was perfect. You know that. I know that. They know that. So cash is king. Now, the next would be a conventional offer or a VA loan. Now, the reason that we've put conventional and VA here, a conventional offer only has to appraise for the value of the property. As long as all other terms in the contract are agreed to, that is all that matters, and you can purchase a home, which means it's a lower risk for a seller. Now, VA, our veterans, we believe that people work harder for our veterans. We want the people that have served our country to find homes. So although there's some things in a VA loan that the seller will have to take care of, we find most of the time that people are absolutely willing and ready to work with a VA loan. Now, the next category is going to be our FHA, first-time home buyers, and USDA loans, okay? Now, of course, this USDA, there's specific areas that you can use it. FHA, there's regulations. Now, the reason that you see this in the order that we do is top of the line typically is cash. Mid is a conventional VA, and at the end would be your FHA and USDA. Now, what I want you to understand is just because you see it this way doesn't mean that it's impossible for an FHA or USDA to beat a cash. It's not impossible to beat a conventional VA. It can be done, but the terms matter. The main ones that I'm going to focus on that I think are the most important. You've got your earnest money, all right? Which is basically a show of good faith, all right? You're willing to put some money down now to show that you're ready to buy the property and go through the process. Another one would be closing cost. Very important that we're going to pay attention to the closing cost. Sometimes when you have an FHA, USDA, even a conventional, if you are at the very top of your pre-approval, you might be required, you might have to ask for some closing costs to be covered. This is because you only have so much money in your bank and you have to meet the down payment and the closing cost. So we are allowed to ask for a portion of the closing cost to be covered. But this is going to make a huge difference here in a minute. So let's write down a couple other ones. The inspections. Everybody knows the inspections, how important they are. Look, you don't have to do an inspection, but as a realtor, I will always suggest and tell you, you should do an inspection. But I've definitely worked with people who know what they're doing and they're confident and they've bought a house without inspections and it works out great for them. More power to them, all right? The next one would be close of escrow, right? This is actually like closing on the property. This is where we go to the closing table and sign the paper. So how fast can we get to the close of escrow? A cash offer can get there in about 2 weeks if everything's done diligently and properly. Everything else, we pretty much estimate, or we're told to estimate about 30 to 45 days. Now, typically you see it right around 30 days, but you give a little grace just in case maybe the buyer's a little slow. You might be slow getting some paperwork, and that is okay. That is the time frame we're going to look at. And the last thing that I do think is very important would be occupancy. Now, occupancy basically means after the close of escrow, after we sign the documents, you own the house. Are you allowing the sellers to stay in the house for a specified amount of time? Maybe they need an extra week to move out. Maybe they're purchasing a property, so there's a little, crossover on the time frames. Maybe they're building a home, so we need to ask, or they're like looking for a little bit. The occupancy can be a help with certain situations. Now, here's what I need everybody to understand. When we're looking at these terms, right? Terms, okay? If you have an FHA or a USDA and you are going up against conventional, VA, or cash, for me to use my negotiation tactics, which is the third key to a winning offer, For me to use this tactics, you have to come over here and say, okay, if I'm here, I need to get all of these as dialed in as possible for the seller. It's imperative that if you are going to go up a conventional against cash, this is dialed in. Now, I'm not going to go into detail about everything on this list, plus the others. There are more things, more terms that we can negotiate in the contract. But what I am going to tell you, one of the most basic ones that I deal with, and I'm trying to help my buyers understand, is the closing cost, okay? If you are an FHA, USDA, conventional VA, even any loan type at all, okay? If your top dollar, let's say, is $250,000, okay? If your top line is $250,000, let's say somebody's asking for $250,000, but you know that you have to ask for, let's say, $5,000 in closing cost. That means that they are already at a net loss. If it's $250,000 and they got to pay the $5,000. And what you have to remember is they're probably paying the realtor's fees as well. And they're going to have some close of escrow closing costs too that they have to take care of. So all you're doing is running the number down. My suggestion to anybody, my family, my friends, my clients, anybody that I'm going to work with when you're buying a home, whether it's your first home or your last home, I don't care. We need this number to be as close to zero as possible. We need this number, absolutely, without a doubt, as close to zero. And here's why. When you send an offer through, we want to make this as clean as possible. We want these terms not to reflect what you want. We need these terms to reflect what the seller wants. And that's how we negotiate. The best way, the best negotiation that you will ever see is when everybody thinks they've won, especially the other side. If you're the buyer, if I'm working with the buyer, right? If the seller thinks, I won, I got my price, I got my terms, they're going to be happy and they're going to be more than happy to work with you. But if you as the buyer say, I knew I wanted those terms, I just didn't say it right off the bat, and I knew what I was willing to do. Guess what? Everybody's winning. The negotiation worked. The seller thinks they're winning. You know you're winning for sure on what you got. That's how we get this done. So my suggestion to anybody and everybody looking to purchase a house, if your top dollar is what you're looking at, I would suggest not looking for it. Lower the price point, okay? We can still find you the home that you're looking for, the home of your dreams if you want. But I would highly suggest speaking to that lender and saying, hey, what number does it need to be so I can ask for no closing costs or as little closing costs as possible? If that number just happens to be $200,000, that's okay. We can find you a home for $200,000 that meets all of your needs, and these terms are going to work, okay? Number one, pre-approval. What type? Cash, conventional, VA, FHA, USDA. 2, the terms. Here's some of your terms. We have more, but here's what I feel is the most important to go over right now. 3, negotiation tactics. I can't negotiate for you if we don't have these terms figured out. If we don't know where we sit up here, I can't do my job and fight for you. When looking at this, your keys to winning an offer: pre-approval, terms, negotiation tactics.